speakers that I've met today, his name is Dan Noël, and he, as part of the Truth Movement, has taken over in the investigation and how would you say the not continuing, but the story of 9/11 has not ended. 9/11 has been a long-standing issue for truthers. It's difficult because they carted away a lot of the evidence. So I think I'm a flat earther by nature. I like it because it's still here. I can still measure it. So I'm wondering what you can tell us about 9/11 and what still makes you pursue it, because I see here that you focused a lot on Building 7, because I think a lot of people did otherwise. And I think that you might have found a reason why Building 7 is still so important and yet so lost in understanding. This is Dan Noël.
Indeed, Building 7 is very important, and so is 9/11. What happens is that there are several layers in the 9/11 conspiracy, which unfortunately very few people understand, even though they are staring us in the face. The most obvious layer is the false flag operation itself, which culminates with the criminal controlled demolition of the Twin Towers with people inside and cameras rolling. The second layer, which is almost as obvious, is the cover-up. The process by which a whole string of law enforcement agencies who did know better, starting with the firefighters in New York City and perhaps ending with the FBI, chose to cover up the demolition and protect the criminal demolitionists rather than do their job and carry out a proper investigation into what happened. And the third layer, and unfortunately the less visited and the most alarming layer of the 9/11 conspiracy, is the censorship thereof. 9/11 is special to the extent that the controlled demolition of the Twin Towers was televised live. The video record is incontrovertible, and it unambiguously demonstrates, even to a layman, the controlled demolition. Meaning that even if law enforcement will not investigate it, there's a bazillion watchdogs or opinion makers who could and should have warned the public about this. We are talking first, of course, of television. We are talking of the New York Times. And if they don't do their job, well, how about television and the press in other countries? In Mexico, in Canada, in Japan, even in quote-unquote rogue countries where the US government has very little to say, like Cuba, or Venezuela, or Russia, or Iran. The most remarkable and the most frightening aspect of 9/11 is not what happened or what did not happen in New York City or at the Pentagon. It's the fact that tens of thousands, literally, of people who formulate opinions for their followers could and should have informed them properly and duly about the Twin Towers controlled demolition and did not do it. So we are talking of civil engineering professors in Egypt. We're talking of associations of psychologists in India. We're talking of Greenpeace. We're talking of Amnesty International. We're talking of the Libertarian Party or the John Birch Society. All those people were given on a golden plate an opportunity to clean up the world of a cancer, and they missed it. This is the fundamental teaching of 9/11, which no other conspiracy teaches. So this was a long tirade, but it captures the gist of my contribution to 9/11. And I invite those of you who want to know more to visit my web at 911censorship.com. That's 911censorship.com.
Where else have you spoken now?
Well, I've spoken in quite a few places. There's something they all have in common, though, is that they'll invite me, people will like me, and then the host will never invite me again.
Why? Because you tell the truth.
That's a conspiracy theory, and I will not invalidate it. It's flattering, it's possible.
I spend a lot of time with the Flat Earth movement, and we're a bit isolated as wackos, so to speak. And one of the concepts I had, you just mentioned, is all the other groups. And I realized that even with any form of awareness, we're still sort of stuck with this lobbying politics thing. In other words, who are you going to speak to is a good question.
That's a good question. In fact, going to the flat Earth hypothesis, I'm not convinced about the flat Earth theory, but you touch then on something very important, is that assuming the Earth is flat, assuming the spherical Earth is an aberration, an invention, a mountain of hypocrisy, then it's not just the flat Earthers who should be preaching a flat Earth. There's a bazillion of organizations.
It's exactly the same list of people you were saying there.
Starting with the professional associations of geographers or travel agents who should be speaking up, and if they done their job a long time ago, there will be no flat Earth movement. It will be superfluous.
How did the engineers do, and are they finished? Or, the group that did the 9/11.
Oh no, they're not finished, but to build up on my point, I propose that the same system that censors the flat Earth is the same system that censors the controlled demolition of the Twin Towers. So I propose that we really have the same problem.
Yeah.
Irrespective of whether the Earth is flat or round, we really are in the same boat. And it's probable that if we work together on clearing the censorship of our issues will just evaporate. And that's where Bldg 7 comes in. I claim that Bldg 7 is, well, a miracle. I'm an atheist who calls the video record of 9/11 a miracle, and it's probable that there were some spiritual entities at work to give us the amazing gift of Bldg 7's controlled demolition 7 hours after the Twin Towers and not 7 minutes. And I propose that the video record of Bldg 7 is the best entry point to expose and crush the censorship of 9/11, of the shape of the Earth, of the chemtrails, of the vaccines, of the Bali terror attacks, of etc., etc. Bldg 7 is a godsend, and I invite you to consider joining.
Can I ask you a question? I think I mentioned to you that one day late in the game, I realized that maybe Flight 93 might have been targeted for Bldg 7, and you used the word, that's one of the conspiracy theories. And you used the word in your speech, conspiracy theory, quite a bit. And I had to be reminded that you do that deliberately, because I don't like the word and it triggers us. And can you talk about the way you use the word and what it means to you?
Well, the system I've developed to teach Bldg 7 is very compelling. There are 3 types of people who don't know 9/11. There are first the 9/11 censors, the people who are paid to promote the lie and understand 9/11 much better than I do. There are also the honest skeptics, people who know about the conspiracy theories, are afraid of them, and will not go into them unless they are given compelling information, which is where Bldg 7 comes in. And then there are the fanatics, the people who have been so traumatized by 9/11 that the more they review the information, the more they are convinced of the official false myth, and the more they have to defend it. So in my outreach system, among other things, I call conspiracy theorists any people who deviate from the official mythical attribution of Bldg 7 destruction to office fires. And that's actually fun, and that touches people, it hits them. And my system consists in forcing people to accept as an absolute truth the destruction of Bldg 7 due to office fires, which is an absurdity and which most people can only feel sick about. So by forcing them to accept that as truth, I force them to accept that the false reality fed to them by television is an uncomfortable place.
I hear what you're saying.
And when that happens, they have the choice. they can stay in the hard place of television or go to the rock of 9/11.
But the imagery is strong.
It is?
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence of something actually happened, and there's visual evidence.
Yeah, that's it, and that's why it's important, and that's why I use that system to force people to realize how uncomfortable the manufactured reality is.
If anyone doesn't know what we're talking about, this is Daniel Noël, who specializes these days in Building 7. Building 7 was the third superstructure, what do they call it, high-rise building. It was over 50 stories tall, 49? And it fell how many hours afterwards?
7.
All on its own. And it was the one moment that got my attention that day. That was the first time I knew there was a problem. Otherwise, it didn't appear to be anything but news, 9/11, until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Because, like you said, the visual evidence is confirmed.
It is, and that's what makes Building 7 so special. So, my message to, I guess, the conspiracy theorists out there is that I know that you are having enormous difficulties getting your message through. Well, there are 2 ways to get your message through. Your way, continue to hit blank walls, or consider trying my way, which is from the very beginning and force people to confront the horrible lie of Building 7. And, when people come to argue with me, they find themselves howling and being called conspiracy theorists before they can say Bob's your uncle. The system is foolproof, and it's basic psychology. I'll add something, if I may, Dan, is that the mendacity humanity lives under is a very complicated process. It's extremely expensive to keep tens of thousands of opinion makers spreading lies day in and day out and keeping them in check. And always watching for leaks in the censorship and plugging these leaks. It's an enormous amount of work. It's gargantuan. The reciprocal truth is that if we can make a single leak in the big censorship, the whole edifice may fall apart. And once we realize that, our research, irrespective of what truth we want the public to know, is to look for the weakness in the giant edifice of the censorship. And if this little loophole is not in your issue, who cares? Pierce that little hole in the weak point of the censorship, and the whole edifice will fall apart, and your issue will clarify itself. So I propose that you hit the censorship at the level of Building 7, and the failure of television to do an exciting and riveting documentary on the quasi-miraculous office fire who could outsmart the best controlled demolition engineers. And there's a fair chance that if enough of us do that, the whole edifice of censorship will crumble, and your issue will clarify itself once the same censorship that censors Building 7 is out of the way.
What is the website again?
911censorship.com. 911censorship.com.
After listening to you and speaking with you, it reminds me of the phrase, the truth is out there. Because this is why we're here. This is why each speaker is here, because they found the truth.
Good point. Yeah, the truth is out there. It's just that when there are richly paid professional obfuscators working as a very close-knit team to hide it, many people will not hear the truth. And I'll add while I'm at it, and then the weatherman is absent, that one of the many conspiracies against humanity is the conspiracy of ignorance of basic psychology. Most of us are led to believe that the human brain works as a perfect reasoning machine. Give a human mind data, the human mind will automatically use logic on it and find some truth, where nothing could be further from reality. Many of the decisions we make are made by the equivalent of little immature children in our brains, and the way we formulate opinions is oftentimes through these immature children. That's just the way the brain is, and the way God our Father made us, or Mother Evolution, whichever you choose. And the master censors who hide from us 9/11 and the shape of the earth and so many other things know it very well. They master basic psychology and they use it against us. So conversely, once we understand the basics of the human brain and its limitations, there's no reason why we cannot transcend them. And now it's time to give back the mic to Dan.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for hearing this, and see you guys later.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's been a pleasure meeting you. Well, the truth is out there, everyone.